Good evening, all. I'm not sure how many of you know that the company that runs the cable car system up and down Table Mountain, called Table Mountain Aerial Cableway Company, or TMAC, shuts down every year for its annual maintenance. And besides general maintenance that happens, there are very big engineering undertakings that take place. The first one is that every 12 years, the cables upon which the cable cars run, called the track cables, are retensioned. But I'm not really going to be speaking about that tonight because I've only seen it happen once and I only have this image related to it. I think those cables get replaced every 90 years. Secondly, there are two cables that are connected to the mountainside and city side of each cable car, forming a loop. These cables pull the cable cars up and down the mountain. They call the heel and haul cable, and these cables get replaced every 4 to 6 years. And then thirdly, every 6 years, the cable car in its entirety gets taken off the cables, dropped carefully onto a makeshift platform, and then stripped in its entirety, where all the parts are checked, rechecked, and then refitted. What makes this so interesting is that this is engineering on a very grand scale. The cables weigh tons, they're kilometers long. It's set in a very unique environment with a lot of the work done on the slopes of Table Mountain as well as on the cables up high above the ground. And this maintenance shutdown is done during Cape Town's midwinter, where the weather doesn't always play its part. Another interesting thing is that besides the engineers that are flown in from Switzerland, the local staff who throughout the year are working in the kiosks and the ticket office and the restaurants, during this period they don overalls, they pick up tools, and they become part of the maintenance team. So it's very inclusive. So how do they change the cables? So what happens is the cable cars are moved out of the docking stations. The engineers tightrope walk along the cables where they fit clamps and trolleys. The cable cars are then connected or secured to these clamps. Technicians then walk to the top of the mountain where they release a 36-ton counterweight block, releasing the tension in the cable. The engineers then are able to go about their work by disconnecting the cable from the cable cars. The cables are connected to a socket, which are connected to the cable cars. They disconnect the socket. The socket is then cut off from the cable and sent away for check-in and refurbishing, and the free end of the cable is lowered down onto the slopes of Table Mountain. While all of this is happening, the new cable, which has been shipped in from Switzerland, is placed outside the lower cable station. It's secured. The free end of the spool of cable is fed through a window in the lower cable station. It's fed through the docking bay, and it's fed or laid about 100 meters up Table Mountain, where it sits alongside the old cable. Technicians then spend about 8 hours splicing the two cables together, and the splice is about 40 to 50 meters long, and it takes about 8 hours to complete the task. Once that's all done and the cables are now connected to each other, the free end of the old cable is fed through a series of pulleys. There's a truck parked on Lower Tafelberg Road, and the free end of the cable is connected to the truck. The truck drives off into the sunset, and as it drives, it pulls the old cable out of the system, and the new cable gets fed up the mountain, through the system, through the top station, and down the other side. Once that's been done, then the whole process gets reversed. The sockets are reconnected to the cables, and the cables are reconnected to the cable cars. Then they begin the process with the other cable, or if it's all done, they retension the cables, and the cable cars are moved back into the docking station. The cable car comes in three big parts. There's the carriage upon which sits on the track cables. This has got the wheels, and this is the part of the cable car that moves the cable car up and down the cables. There's a stabilizing arm which is connected to the carriage, and this stabilizing arm acts to stabilize the cabin which is fitted to it, so that it's horizontal at all times. So when you go up the mountain, you're not in an angle. Everything gets stripped and rechecked. The stabilizing arm gets sent away for infrared testing, where they test for cracks and any anomalies which can be repaired or dealt with. And this whole process isn't a thumbsuck. It's not a random thing. This is all done according to an international code of conduct. So everything gets stripped, checked again, rechecked, and either replaced or refitted. And then the box ticked and everything starts to get reassembled. Because of the location, with a lot of the work done on the slopes of the mountain and in the docking stations, you can't get big crane trucks and the likes there. So a lot of the intensive hard labor is done manually. And this picture is the guys actually manually winching the cable car back onto the stabilizing arm. Once everything has been done, the cable car does a test runs up and down the mountain to see if it all is good. But then there's further maintenance that needs to happen where the engineers can't get to by foot. So technicians jump onto the top of the cable car and they start their journey. And one of the things that needs to happen is every year the cables upon which the cable cars run need to be cleaned. So the technicians climb onto the platform right at the top of the stabilizing arm, and they manually clean these cables using wire brushes and buckets to collect the rust and the dirt and all the muck. You can't use any detergents because of environmental issues. The slack rope calipers through which the cables run have to be checked to make sure that all is working, all the wheels are lubricated, and necessary steps taken if need be. Since 2005, I've been the only photographer commissioned to photograph this maintenance shutdown in depth. And not only am I blown away by the scale of the operation or this engineering feat, but also by the men and the women who are dedicated and work in all different types of weather conditions just to ensure that each and every one of us can have a bumpy free and a safe ride to the top of the mountain. Thank you very much.